So after the disaster that was X-Men Origins Wolverine, course correction had to happen. The idea of solo X-Men films were dropped, but the Origins story kind of remained in a sense, not in the solo option, but in a larger picture Team X-Men film again. And so instead of getting X-Men Origins Magneto, we went back to the origins of the entire team in X-Men First Class. And this here is my revisit review for you. So let's get into it. So hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. And yes, on a Friday evening at this time, I am working my way through, revisiting, reviewing the X-Men franchise from those early films up to present. It's been some time since I last watched these films, especially the early ones, and never have I watched them in quick succession. And I wanted to see how they held up today, considering the state of comic book movies, the genre of that within cinema, which isn't particularly doing very well. So anyway, so X-Men First Class, this film here, it came out in 2011, June the 1st for us here in the UK. It was rated 12A, which meant that I was allowed to go and see it at the cinema, and super excited I was. I trudged myself along, and for 2 hours and 11 minutes, that's the runtime, I watched this film. It was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who had given us Kick-Ass, and you know, he went on to give us the Kingsman franchise, so he's no stranger to the comic book genre. It was written by Ashley Miller, Zack Stentz and Jan Goldman, and the film saw a complete recast of characters and new characters brought into the fray as well. And, you know, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen were perfect casting for the characters of Charles Xavier and Magneto. So who could fill this void? What younger actors were there to fill this void? And thusly they landed on James McAvoy as Charles Xavier and the fantastic Michael Fassbender as Eric Lenscher. The film also hosted actors like Jennifer Lawrence as Raven, or Mystique, as it's become to be known. Kevin Bacon, fantastic. Any film with Kevin Bacon in, spot on. He played Sebastian Shaw. Rose Byrne joined as Moira McTaggart. Nicholas Hoult as Hank, or come on to become Beast. And January Jones as Emma Frost, as well as many other names. Michael Ironside even popped up towards the end of the film, and again, always great to see Michael Ironside in a project. The film had a budget of $160 million and went on to take a worldwide gross of $352.5 million worldwide. It had an 86% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and 87% audience score. So this film here, like I said, it goes back to the origins. It is set in the 1960s, which was a great idea. The comic book itself came about in the 1960s, which inspired that setting. And the film starts, it begins, and it gives us the same opening as what we got in that very first X-Men movie all those years before. We're talking about set in Poland, the Jewish concentration camp, the Nazis marching the Jewish people through, the separation of the child from his parents, the child being a young Eric Lenscher, the fence being bent, but then the camera pans up to reveal Kevin Bacon's Sebastian Shaw seeing these events, and he goes on to take this child in and attempt to get the child to work these powers again. And the young Eric cannot do it, so his mother is dragged into the office with the threat of her life being taken away if he can't move this simple coin. He cannot move the coin, and his mother takes a bullet to the head, and down she drops. And so begins the journey of Eric Lenchner. And this is what this is the inspiration for that what would have been that Magneto origin movie, but we had it here again. And Eric goes mental, and everything metallic in the office starts to crumple up, be thrown around. The Nazis their skulls are crushed by their helmets. It's a fantastic scene, and Sebastian Shaw is overjoyed by what he is seeing and hands this coin to Eric. We then jump forward in time a bit to the 1960s, where we do catch up with Charles Xavier. But before that, we do have a flashback of him as a young boy. And as a young boy, he's introduced to Raven, stealing food from his house. And this is where the friendship bonds between them. She stays with him. She's kind of like a surrogate sister to him, for him to look after. And thus this story progresses. And we have a fantastic story following Eric Lenchner, Michael Fassbender's character, almost as a kind of Nazi hunter. He is hunting down these people that were involved in what happened to the Jewish community and the concentration camps and all that, and he's killing them, he's taking them out, and good luck to him with that as well. It's fantastic character development for that individual. All the while this is going on, Charles Xavier is working his way through school, through college, getting a degree, whatever, to become a professor and all this sort of a thing. And so begins this story, and this is a fantastic story because you've got Sebastian Shaw. Now, Sebastian Shaw, he wants to essentially start World War III. He wants a World War III to begin because it turns out that he is actually a mutant. He's got mutant powers, and he can absorb power. So for him, if there's a nuclear war, it will make him all the more powerful because he can just absorb that energy into him and expel it how he wishes. But he also wishes to see the human race, the threat, wiped out, and he wants to see the mutants, find all the mutants and bring them forward, much like what Magneto wants to do in the future. He's almost like an inspiration to Eric, but not, even though he's an enemy on a different side. So like I said, what we're given is a film that touches upon real events, and it keeps with that by the World War III stuff and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Sebastian Shaw manipulating both the Russians and the Americans to position their weapons in Turkey, which is close to the Russian border, and in Cuba to get this war going. While this is happening, you've got Eric, you've got Charles. They form their friendship. They come about. They realise that they've got something in common. They become brothers essentially because they're both mutants, and they want the same thing. They want better things for mutant kind, but only obviously, as we know, they want the same thing, but they want to go about it differently and end up with a different agenda to get to the same. Charles wants mutants accepted. Eric wants them to basically take over to better man, shall we say. So we're given a great story in this film, we really are, and it offers up some fantastic action set pieces. Now, all the cast, all of them are fantastic in this film. Jennifer Lawrence, she's fantastic as a young Raven. There's even a bit where she does actually turn into what's her face, who played it in the original films. Her name is eluding me now. She's currently in Star Trek, isn't she? Nicholas Hoult, very good as Hank Pym, although I'm not too sold on when he does become Beast, on the look of Beast. I don't particularly like that too much. January Jones, I didn't mind her as Emma Frost. It was great to see Emma Frost in this film, and it's great to see this friendship bond between these two characters and then go its separate ways. They form the team together, the X-Men team, but then there's a divide at the end of the film, and they both realise that they're not going to be working together. They want the same thing, but they need to go about it differently to get as a means to an end. Matthew Vaughn on directing duties in this film. He's he knocks it out of the park. This was a very fresh take on the X-Men. It looked fantastic. The uniforms looked good. They brought the yellow back into it, much like the comic books at the time were doing, and it looked like a solid film. This was a very, very good film. You had other X-Men characters thrown into the fray. Now, there is a bit of confusion that lies between this film and the earlier films. You know, the friendship between the friendship between Charles and Raven. You know, they come up together as brother and sister, but you go back to the earlier films and there's no mention of this between Charles and Mystique. It's as though that never existed. So there is these kind of continuity problems, and we know that that is a mainstay of the X-Men franchise, because they even started to jump decades after this, and the films, the characters not grow any older. It was a mess in that sense, but let's take a look at them as individual movies and how they hold up. And for me, this is probably, I'll be honest, this is probably my favourite X-Men movie. I can't deny that. I love this film. I love the 1960s era. I love the look of it. I love the story, the real world elements of the story that this plays in and plays around. It does great for me. Obviously, Wolverine isn't in this film, Logan, with the exception of a cameo appearance, which is, the only F-bomb that's dropped in the film. And there's, there's some other nods to the film and other films as it goes along. But yeah, a great film, a great film. And I truly adore this film. I think, like I said, well written, well directed. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's tense. The actors do fantastic jobs. And great. So big thumbs up for me for this movie. It's a solid X-Men film. Now, moving forward, obviously we have X-Men Days of Future Past. But before that was the release of The Wolverine, the second Wolverine solo movie. And this is the film that I'll be looking at next in line. That will be in a week's time. And then a week after that, so 2 weeks from today, will be Days of Future Past. Now, I do plan on covering both the theatrical cut of that film and the road cut of that film. But what I'll probably do is I'll do the theatrical cut next week, or in 2 weeks' time. I'll carry on through the X franchise, and at the end I will come in with the road cut to round things up, so that I've got a bit of a break between those two movies. Anyway, that's me done once again with X-Men Revisited, X-Men First Class, or just X First Class as it was otherwise titled. So 1 week, The Wolverine. I'll see you then. But let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this X-Men film. Did it work for you? Didn't it work for you? Where do you sit this one in a scale of all the X-Men movies? Let me know. Speak to you soon.